Aggression stems from the fear of losing safety or comfort. So resource guarding is guarding that which makes you feel safe or comfortable.
I could be a mess, stressed in yesterday. He don't care less. He sees me anyway. Yeah, he sees me anyway. My dog thinks I'm great. He thinks I'm number one. He never hates, even when I'm done.
Welcome to this episode of Dog Leads. I'm Steve Bishop. I'm a certified dog trainer. I've been training professionally for about 15 years. I am a member of the Pet Professional Guild and a Family Paws parent educator. I also hold a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in sociology. If you have any questions or have any topics you'd like me to talk about, you can contact me at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com.
This episode is brought to you by Dogs and Storks, presented by Steve Bishop. The presentation will be on December 13th and repeated February 7th. Advanced registration is required. The link is in the description. If you are pregnant or planning to become pregnant, this program sets the groundwork for success through education before baby arrives. The goal of Dogs and Storks is to help expecting families learn how to set their dog and baby up for success through education and preparation.
This topic was sent in by two friends of mine, Shannon and Kristen, who both wanted me to talk about resource guarding. A lot of this information comes from articles by Suzanne Clothier, Diane Gerard, Pat Miller, and Louise Ginman, and I'll leave links to all those articles in the description also. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, aggression, when it's not related to pain, it's just fear of losing safety or comfort, doing what you need to protect that resource. So resource guarding is the use of avoidance, threatening, or aggressive behavior by a dog to retain control of items in the presence of a person or other animal. Refers to a sequence of behavior patterns that dogs exhibit to gain or maintain primary access to a perceived valuable item when another animal or person approaches. So it has its roots in anxiety and a lack of social confidence. One of the articles talks about the difference between resource guarding and rule setting, whereas rule setting is behavior that's based in confidence about the ability to control access to the resource, even at a distance or perhaps even in your absence. So the example they give is if you have a credit card, your spouse borrows it, or the waitress takes it, that's not a problem, but you don't leave it on the table. You might glare at any person who keeps eyeing your card sitting on the table. That would be the guarding. When Duncan was first introduced to tennis balls, one of the things he would do, if he had the tennis ball as I approached, he would bite and grab onto the tennis ball tighter. I had worked on a drop it or a leave it cue quite a bit with him. So he would drop it, he wasn't happy about it, but then I would take the tennis ball and I would throw it. So he learned that even though I was taking the resource from him, he could get that back. So he had that confidence and a lack of anxiety that I was going to take this resource away from him and keep it. Dogs try to avoid confrontation in ways that often go unnoticed. So things like yielding space, which is simply moving themselves and the resource slightly away from whatever they see as threatening, walking away to a new area, eating a little bit faster, staring at the floor, lowering their head over the resource until the person or dog has passed by. The behavior can be classified as problematic when it causes distress, danger, or dysfunction to the dog or the member of the dog's social group, such as people. Resource guarding usually starts out pretty low key, but it can get worse if the dog is constantly confronted for the resource. So we want to understand why the dog resource guarding, which can help us set out a protocol to change the emotional response to the item they consider worthy of defending. So a lot of the resource guarding tends to be because that resource is consistently taken away and they don't have access to it. We want to keep in mind that dogs do things because they get something out of it. So an example I give in my group classes is if the dog is chewing on the coffee table leg, they're getting something out of it. It's relieving boredom. It is helping because their teeth hurt. So we want to make sure we're addressing that need or that desire. Malcolm, it was not long after we first got him. I was at work one day and I found this little stuffed squirrel with a squeaky toy in it. And I threw it in the back of my truck because it just stank, and I figured I'd let it sit there in sun bleach and the weather would kind of clean it before I brought it home. I call it the piss squirrel because it smelled like something had peed on it. So I finally bring it home, let Malcolm have it, and at first he was like, wow, this is a really great toy, and he's playing with it and being pretty good. But as I approached him, kind of do some cooperative play with him, he got very, very defensive. So I have to think that the only difference between that toy and any other toy that he had was that smell that was on it. Even though I couldn't smell the pee that was on it anymore, I think he was probably picking up on that smell and got very possessive of that toy. So what ended up happening was we just removed the toy, and I'm going to talk about management here in a little, but that was how we dealt with that situation, was just remove the toy. He had plenty of other options. So one of your best courses of action is prevention. You want to look for those first signs of resource guarding, not wait until it escalates to aggression. So in my case, I just took the piss squirrel away. We don't want to allow the dog to rehearse the behaviors, because if they find out that it works, they may start aggressing earlier and earlier. If you're approaching from 5 feet away, they start to aggress and like, oh, that works. So next time when I see the person 10 feet away, I'm going to try it then, and it can just kind of snowball. The other option is just to let them have whatever the item or the resource is. So we don't want to set up that confrontation where they have that chance to rehearse the behavior. If it's something, like food that they have to have, we want to allow them to have that without being disturbed, and then we can address that later if we need to. Like we keep Malcolm's food bowl in the kitchen right where it kind of goes into the family room, so a lot of people walk past it. If we were dealing with a food aggression problem or resource guarding of food, might want to move that food bowl so that we're not interfering with him, and again, he just doesn't have that chance or that opportunity to rehearse those behaviors. Another thing you can do is constantly supervise the dog. Put a leash on the dog and just let him drag it around. You want a real light line so it's not going to interfere with him moving around. You want to make sure it's not getting caught on anything. But that will allow you to get the dog from a safe distance. You can grab the end of the leash instead of trying to go up and grab the dog himself and pull them away. Another thing you could try is to use some treats, and you want something very, very high value, but want to break them up into small pieces so that they don't have a resource that they're going to redirect to. The rule of thumb is when you give a dog a treat, it should be about pea size. You want them to get enough to get a taste of it, but not something that they're going to have to stand there and chew, and that's going to be a distraction while you're trying to give them something else to do. And then once they're interested in that food or those treats that you're tossing, you'd use a rake or a stick, a garbage picker, something like that, to pick up the item and get away from the dog from a safe distance. You never want to put your hands near an item that they are resource guarding. So we want to build a positive association with being approached when the dog does have this resource. So I had a client a while ago, and she owned her own store, and she would bring her dog with her every day. The dog was great with everybody that came in except for the UPS delivery person. And one of the things I suggested was make treats available to the UPS driver, and when they came in, take some of those treats and throw them behind the dog. Not a long way, but far enough where the dog had to turn around. The idea is the dog learns that if they allow this person to come in, great things are going to fall from the sky, and I am totally free to move away from this person. And practicing this over time, the dog became more comfortable with the UPS driver coming into the store. So with guarding an item, you can kind of do the same thing. One of the articles suggested, which is basically the technique I use, have a handful of treats. As you walk by the dog, just in the general vicinity, toss a few treats out without stopping and just keep moving. After the dog gets comfortable with that, then you want to stop just long enough to toss a couple of treats and then move on. And then once the dog gets comfortable with that, you're going to stop for longer and longer periods of time, then slowly move closer. And as I always say, it's really easy to talk through this stuff really quickly, but this stuff does take time. So you may be working a couple of days on each step, or depending on how intense the behavior is, could take a couple of weeks. We don't want to get to that point where the dog aggresses and has an opportunity to practice those guarding behaviors, meaning the biting, the snapping. Also, as I've said about some of the other things, talking about this in 15 minutes, give or take, is only brushing the surface of this topic. If it's something that's really serious, I highly recommend finding a good force-free trainer and get them in to see the behavior and come up with a plan on how to address the situation. Hopefully that gives you a few ideas, at least where to start and kind of how to look at the whole situation from the dog's perspective. If you have any comments or questions about this, please feel free to leave them in the comments, or you can email me at bishopsgatetraining@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me.